All right, welcome everyone. I think the last couple ones are popping in here.
Yeah.
If you can keep your microphones on mute until your question comes up. So welcome everyone to the Final X and Beat the Streets annual benefit press conference. We have three accomplished athletes with us today. We're waiting on Spencer Lee. Hopefully he's going to be able to pop in before we get finished. He's having some travel related issues, but Spencer Lee, hopefully he'll be with us here. But we do have for sure with us here in the room right now, Kennedy Blades. She's a 2024 Olympic Games silver medalist. Macey Kilty, the two-time senior world championship medalist in 23 and 24. And Yianni Diakomihalis, and Yianni is the 2022 Senior World Championship silver medalist. So welcome all them. And of course, Brendan Buckley, the executive director of Beat the Streets. The Beat the Streets event is June 16th. That's a Saturday at the Prudential Center. Two sessions, 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. We're also going to have an on-site press conference, and anyone who's planning on coming out on Saturday should also come out on Friday, 11 a.m. We're still determining the order of who's going to be there exactly, but 11 a.m. in that main foyer, the East Foyer there at Prudential Center on the Friday previous, the day before. So if you have any questions, press release, media application, you can go into the chat right now and ask me, or you can email me, jerry@jerrymaloney.com. I'm going to put that email address in the chat so you have it there. If you want to ask a question, just go and use the raise hand function. So if you go down to React and you find a raise hand, you raise your hand and we'll get to as many of you as we can. And also, if you need to record this, you can record. Just let me know if you need permission to record. You can send me a quick note in the chat, and I'll happily add you to the to that. So we're happy to do that. Okay. So let me start with Brendan. Brendan, how satisfying for you is it that every time you host one of these Beat the Streets events, great superstar, world-class wrestlers like these three and the others always seem to come to the front and want to participate?
Sure. Yeah. Even before we started hosting Final X, USA Wrestling is our strongest partner. They've always partnered with us to make for an incredible make for an incredible event and send us their best athletes. So even before it was a qualifying event, we've had, this event and New York City's most iconic venues, the USS Intrepid, Times Square, South Street Seaport, Grand Central. Then we took it indoors to the Hulu Theater. Yianni was a part of that one. And so we've just had some really just spectacular and iconic events and some really famous venues in New York. So when we switched to Final X a few years ago, I felt like it was really important that we took the event indoors. I'm sure we'll take it outdoors again, and having an event like Pier 17 at the South Street Seaport is cool, and Times Square, but it really provided us the ability to provide it to a wider audience. And so, yeah, these athletes have always stepped up, and now to be able to serve as host for Final X to determine who on the men's and women's side will represent the U.S. is a privilege and an honor, and we're just eternally grateful for all these athletes in USA Wrestling.
Great. Appreciate that, Brendan. The event has been great all over, wherever it's been, all the different locations, and Newark has been a great addition to it. We had a great event there a couple of years ago. I want to go through and just get a quick question into each of our guests just to kind of get the ball rolling here, and then we'll open it up. Again, raise your hand, the raise hand function. If you're having trouble with the raise hand function, you want to put that in the chat, or you want to physically raise your hand right in the window here, I can get you guys into. I'll make sure we get to all the questions. But Yianni, I'll start with you. What would it mean to you to get back to the Senior World Championships 3 years after you got your silver medal there?
Yeah. Obviously I'm doing this because I have goals at the senior level. I want to be a world champion, Olympic gold medalist. And I take a lot of pride in my training and the people around me. So, being able to get back would be great. I feel like, but between injuries and weight cut and just kind of, maybe my health kind of going against me the last few years, I think being able to get back to the world championships this year would be a really positive sign. Just that kind of, I can finally put that stuff behind me and kind of be the best version of myself, but also, I'm getting back to the part that I enjoy the most, right? Like I want to compete against the best guys in the world, and the world championship is where you find the best of the best. So I think it's kind of a combination of putting those health issues, weight cut issues behind me and looking towards kind of my goals in the sport.
Great. Thanks, Yianni. And Macey, we talked about the 2023 event a couple minutes ago. You did extremely well at that. You got a pin and you advanced on. What are your memories of that Beat the Streets event, and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was my first senior world team trial, so super memorable tournament for me. And yeah, I just thought it was a really cool venue and really cool facility to be able to make my first world team at. And I'm excited to be back this year.
Great. Thanks, Macey. And Kennedy, a lot 2 years ago, and then in the Olympics was made of you and maybe a meet being the future of American wrestling. Does that put a lot of pressure on you, extra pressure in your matches to kind of have that on you?
Yeah, I don't think it puts any pressure. It just makes me want to be a better athlete and just, the sport's growing really rapidly. And so I hope that, I could be a leader in the sport in the way that it can inspire girls to reach their goals and even surpass mine. Because at the end of the day, I want, America, wrestling to be number one in the male and female division. So I think it's more exciting than pressure, if anything. And yeah, like me and Amit, we're really showing how it doesn't matter the age, you could do you could do whatever as long as you work hard. And so if anything, it's more inspirational to just keep pushing female wrestling in the US. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kennedy. And so again, if anyone is ready for a question, either let me know in the chat if it's not working on the chat function for you on the raise hand, or go ahead and do your raise hand. We're going to start with James Gamina. James is from Sports Media Report.
Yeah, I have a question for Yianni. As Brendan mentioned, you've competed before at Beat the Streets at a couple different venues. So what makes this event so special for you?
I mean, it's kind of a twofold thing, right? Kind of talking about selfishly, I get to compete against the best of the best, right? I've wrestled Bajrang, who's a Olympic medalist. He was number one in the world and the rankings at the time when we wrestled. I've wrestled Vladimir Konchikashvili, who was an Olympic gold medalist. And then all of my other times at Final X have been, or at Beat the Streets have been part of Final X, part of that World Team Trials process. So for me, right, it's an opportunity that's given to me to kind of push myself against the best of the best, right? But also, Beat the Streets in general stands for a very noble cause. And it's the kind of thing that, we talk about as wrestlers, as athletes in general. We're given a platform and you can choose kind of how to use that. But I feel like with the gifts I've been given, it's a duty of mine, maybe responsibility is the word, to be able to give back and help whenever I can. And if I can support something like Beat the Streets or something that Beat the Streets is supporting, it's the right thing to do. And especially when it's also good for me. But aside from that, it's the right thing to do.
Great. Thanks. Next up is Kyle Klingman with Flow.
Kennedy, I'm interested in the conversations you may or may not have had with Terry Steiner, who's the USA Wrestling national team coach, about splitting up the talent. You're at 68, presumably Amit will be at 72, and then you have a loaded 76 kilogram field led by Kylie Welker. What were those conversations?
Yeah, basically well, I was already talking to my Coach Izzy, like at the Olympics. I was like, I don't think I want to do 76 anymore because like the second day of weigh-ins at the Olympics, I was like 73.8. So I just never hit 76 for the past 2 years. And he's just like, okay, let's see what your body feels like after you get off of creatine, off of like the food diet I was on, like pretty much to see where I was walking around. And I knew I was going to be light. So when I committed to Iowa, I told Coach Chan that I want to be the 160 pounder. And she was like, oh, okay, like you're probably gonna have to cut. And I was like, trust me, like I know I'm gonna be around that weight. So when the season came around, I was weighing about 158. And for 76 kilos, 167. And then for 68 kilos, 149. So I felt really good during the entire season. But I was kind of apprehensive of going 76 again, especially because the ranking event was coming up in January. And every ranking event you get plus 2 kilos. And so that would be like 78 kilos, which was like huge for me. Um, and so I already had a feeling I wanted to go down. I just wasn't communicating with anyone. So then I think like one practice coach, Terry, called me and he was telling me about like the plan he kind of had. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise because, I was nervous to speak about it because I was like, I could finally sit in Final X. Like I've never done that before. Um, I was number 2 in the world. So I was like, I don't know if I should make the move, but that was a sign for me. Like I'm willing to go 68 for sure. Cause I like doing Olympic weights specifically. Just because at the end of the day, like my goal is Olympics. So 72 kilos wasn't an option for me in my head, especially walking around like 157, 158 and 72 kilos is 158 pounds. So yeah, after season my body kept going down that naturally. I was just training a lot and stuff. So yeah, I was around 152 and that's perfect as easy 3 cut, like 3 pound cut, which is like one practice. And so yeah, so that was kind of the conversation. I already had it in my head before he even mentioned it to me. So yeah, and it like hopefully, we obviously pull this off because all 3 of us have been bringing back world medals, but we just keep fighting each other. Well, mainly me and Kylie because me and me and Kylie never really wrestled, but yeah. So I think it's a perfect lineup, and I'm super excited for what's to come.
Next up, Eli from the Des Moines Register.
I have another question for Kennedy as well. You kind of had the unique opportunity, if I'm remembering the details correctly, last year of your making the Olympic team was that first senior level team you had made to kind of go out on that stage. I'm curious what you take from something like that, where it's your first senior world experience on that level, and how you maybe adjust to as you try to make another world team and try and go for a world championship.
Yeah, it was super exciting making my first senior world team as an Olympian. And it was very different for sure. Like there wasn't like they're kind of treating us like royalty. Like there were so many resources, and it was crazy because I'm so used to like the cadet or junior, like where we have to basically do everything on our own. So like we had nutritionists, massage therapists, people were just helping us so much. And Terry's like, yeah, this is what happens when you make the senior world team. So I'm like, okay, like, it kind of motivated me to just keep doing the same thing. But, I've gotten so much experience the past 2 years when I was with Sunkist Kids. And, I know the field a little bit, but now that I'm switching weight classes 68, I'm not really sure who my opponents will be, but I know like, regardless, I'll have the help from my coaches to like, I guess study them, stuff like that, adjust my wrestling if I need to. But I think if anything, they're gonna have to adjust their wrestling. But I think it's super exciting, and I'm a little more confident going into like this senior world like Final X and stuff because I understand what it takes, especially going to Final X 2 years ago against Adeline Gray, and then going to Olympic trials, stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it if anything, and yeah, I think it's gonna turn out really well.
And just to follow up, if I could, you obviously kind of have a different distinction in the spring of doing Hawkeye Wrestling Club versus the Iowa Women's Wrestling Club. What's the distinction there, and how does that kind of work and operate?
Yeah, so basically during season, I'm with the Iowa Women's Wrestling program, and we do our college season, everything. I have amazing partners in there, great coaches, and then for off season, I go with Coach Brands and Coach Dennis for Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and I'm still able to utilize the girls, but I'm also able to utilize the guys as well. And as you guys know, the men's program is very elite, so they really do they really push me a lot. Like I get absolutely destroyed, but it's okay because it kind of reminds me of Izzy Style a lot, which is my home club with Coach Izzy. And I think it's just something I really need, especially going into the senior world level. I know everyone's hungry to, get a world championship. So I know that if I need to adjust my wrestling, I will. So just being able to have so many different coaches that are such a high level and high level partners, I think is huge. So yeah, just being part of both of the teams has been great. And yeah, we've worked really well together. And so like at Final X and US Open, all that stuff, Coach Izzy and Coach Brands will be in my corner. And then like during season, Coach Sean and Coach Tanya or Coach Gary and them will be in my corner. But at the end of the day, we're all part of Iowa and we work really well together. So yeah.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Thank you.
Eli, thanks, Kennedy. Next up is Andrew Gasper with Drew Blogs.
All right, this question kind of can be answered to any of the athletes, really. But first and foremost, Kennedy, you talk a lot. You've spent a lot of time with Coach Izzy. He's been a great innovator for our sport. And obviously, within the last month or so after the U.S. Open, we've seen the news of RAF, Real American Freestyle. And there have been talks of some athletes' names that have been thrown around. And obviously, we have Final X and things coming up. But how excited are you for something like RAF? And do you see a sustainable professional league being able for men and for women with the people that are behind RAF? So that's my first question for Kennedy, and then I'll ask other questions for the other guys after.
Yeah, I think the Real American Freestyle Wrestling is going to be huge for the sport. I know Coach Izzy at the end of the day wants to push wrestling to like the highest level, and especially to get attention, the professional level is perfect. And so him partnering with great people like Eric Bishop, Hulk Hogan, Chad, they were able to, raise all the funding and put an amazing event together. And so this is definitely going to be a huge thing for the sport. The goal obviously is to bring people outside that don't know anything about wrestling to come watch and obviously invest in the sport financially, being there at the event, stuff like that. And so I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be the face of the women's part. So there's going to be some exciting things coming up. And yeah, I think it's definitely going to be sustainable, especially because we have really big names like Hulk Hogan. A lot of people know about him. So he'll bring his audience to come watch, real American wrestling instead of like the fake one, WWE. Although WWE is great, but like, just so we can get recognition too. But it's going to be really huge. Coach is already signing a bunch of people. And I think Coach is a huge asset because, so many elite wrestlers. He has great connections with the college guys, the college women's, the senior women, the senior men. And so, he's working on signing a bunch of people. And a lot of big names have been signed that'll be announced pretty soon. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we really just want to grow the sport as big as possible, especially because women's wrestling is on such a high rocket of the fact that they keep breaking records for being the sport that a lot of people are getting into. And so why not make it professional? Why not allow people to actually, wrestle and love the sport instead of like, since there's not enough funding, they'll just go do a regular job. So yeah, that's the goal, is just for people to have something to fall back on once they are done with college, or if they don't want to make the world or Olympic team, they can go into professional wrestling. So this is going to be really exciting.
And if I could just follow that up real quick with, at the U.S. Open, it's more of an open platform. And not only that, you have, I think the wrestlers, the bigger name wrestlers such as yourself, Macey, Yianni, you're all more accessible. But for on the female side, how important is that, do you think, to see little like youth male wrestlers, not only that, but also their parents, their dads and their moms wanting to come up and have autographs and take pictures with you? I think that kind of shows like where women's wrestling is going. But how do you feel after you get off the mat or you're done coaching with Coach Izzy and you've got a line of kids right there for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. Sometimes when I'm trying to warm up, it's like kind of hard, so I have to like go somewhere else. But I think it's just amazing because back then I didn't have a girl to go to get autographs or to take pictures and stuff, and that was like 10 years ago. So yeah, when I was like 11, it was just like me and a bunch. It was a very, very male dominant sport. So just being able to be a person like that is super exciting. I can't help but smile, and I always try to sign everyone's thing, get a pictures with everyone, because, at the end of the day, that can change someone's life. And so, I really worked hard to get to where I am, and I just want to be, representative for girls that they can do this too, or they can surpass it. They can be multiple Olympic champs. They can win Olympics at 18 like me, stuff like that, they could win Olympics at such a young age like me. So yeah, I mean, I just try my best, and like at the US Open, it was really cool because we've never had a venue like that where like they were able to literally wrestle next to their idol, you know. I remember being at, like, I think it was US Open or something when I was 17. Oh, it was Olympic trials. And I was like, what the heck? I'm wrestling next to Kyle Snyder. Like, I was just like it was insane to me, but those kids feel the same way. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's just crazy, but I love it so much, and I'll never, I'll never stop loving it, honestly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Does others have want to raise your hand? I know we have a question. Richard Immel has a question.
Yeah, question for Macey. Two-part question, really. For you, you're coming in as one of the pre-qualified athletes. You didn't have to compete at the Open. You're one of 4 athletes who already qualified for Final X by winning the world medal and making that declaration that you're going to stick at that weight class for Final X. But for you, just what are your thoughts of number one coming in as the favorite, the returning medalist? Whereas in past Final X, maybe that hasn't been the case, but for you coming in as the favorite, and you're one of the few people who has your matchup set for Final X. So I'm curious your thoughts on your opponent and kind of what you need to do to get ready for her in New Jersey.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've always been around Sarah Hildebrand, and I feel like I'd always have to go to these tournaments to get qualified for tournaments like Final X and World Team Trials, and she'd always be the one sitting out, and she'd always say how awesome it was to be sitting out and not have to really worry about that process. And so to be able to do that and kind of build myself up into that, from competing at now 2 world championships and now hopefully a 3rd one here this summer. I think I really like the process that, USA Wrestling kind of not, they just like, you're able to kind of keep proving yourself, and they're going to keep rewarding that. So I really like that concept. And I'm excited to compete at these next world championships. Of course, I know I wrestled who I'm going to have in Final X 3 times now within the year. So I had her at last World Team Trials and then at Nationals this past winter. So I'm very familiar with my opponent here in the next couple months. So I'm excited to keep the ball rolling that way.
Great. Thanks, Macey. Next up is Eddie Goldman, the great Eddie Goldman.
Great. Hey, Jerry, thank you for that compliment. Question for Kennedy. You answered some of this before, but if you look at your agenda for the coming year, you're going to be running all over the world, wrestling internationally on the senior level. You're going to be wrestling in college. You're going to be doing whatever events the new Real American Freestyle has, and they're already featuring you. I'm sure you've seen their website and everything. They're featuring you and mentioning you as one of the top wrestlers that they have. Then you have school and everything else in your life. How are you? I know you're young and energetic and an elite athlete, but how are you pacing yourself with all of this and getting some balance with all these different venues all at once?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. Like if you say it out loud, I sometimes don't even realize it. Luckily classes are ending really soon, in like I think a week and a half. So that'll be nice. Unfortunately the finals are coming up, so that kind of sucks. But so yeah, at least I'll have the summer. Well, I'm taking a summer class, but it is a lot sometimes to balance. And I do sometimes get like overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh. So honestly, it sounds crazy. Well, not crazy, but like honestly, I just take a lot of naps to like regroup because it's so much goes on. And I just really try to like be chill. Like if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like running camps, training, stuff like that, I just pretty much locked up in my room and I just like calm down because like you said, it is kind of a lot. But I think what makes it great is that I'm staying busy. So like Coach Izzy always told me, no matter what, stay busy because that's when you can mess up. Which obviously I've never messed up before, but like he's just saying that out of like what he's done before. So I think it's great, staying busy, stuff like that. And I'm just taking advantage of every opportunity because at the end of the day, for me, like wrestling is amazing. But I'm not gonna do it for like the rest of my life. I also want to like have a family, stuff like that, have a career. So might as well just take advantage while I'm in the sport. And also like one of the main reasons why I'm doing so many tournaments internationally is because since I've switched weight classes, I don't really have like any points because like you basically have points when you go into like a world tournament. And so since I switched weight classes, I'm like not in the 68 kilo, like I don't know, like top four or whatever. So hopefully when I could keep winning these tournaments like Pan Am's, ranking event in July, stuff like that, I can gain those points. And then in between, obviously, I'm just training here at Iowa, and going back and forth to Chicago. But yeah, I just really try to take advantage and just be happy and enjoy life. That's the only way I can really stay sane because of how much is going on. But like with the whole Real American Wrestling thing, that's just a super exciting thing that's happening. So it's so hard to be like, oh man, like this is coming up. Like it's like, oh my gosh, like when can this come sooner? I know the first event is August 30th, so I do have some time. But it's great because it's right before Worlds. So just right after that, we have something exciting again, which will be World Championships. So yeah, honestly, it's just things to look forward to. I just always try to see the positive and have a lot of gratitude because, like you said, it is a lot, but it's a lot of fun stuff. So yeah,
Good luck.
thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Next up is Tanner Lefevre from Hawkeye Report.
I hope you guys can hear me okay. I'm patching in while traveling. This is for Macey and also Kennedy. You guys have both spoken about coming to Iowa, and obviously everybody knows the coaches that you have and the partners that you have in the room. I'm curious in terms of your schedule this past season. I know both of you guys wrestled anywhere from 25 to 30 matches during the college season. And, a lot of those were over quick. A lot of them were bonus point wins. But I'm just curious, that was different from the situations you'd been in prior to Iowa in terms of consistent competition, weigh-ins, et cetera. Just what did you guys gain from kind of having that constant feedback over the past year, being in the Iowa room?
I personally really liked being able to compete more often. It's something that I wasn't really able to do previously. Just with the international schedule, we don't compete as much, and so it was nice to be able to be in the practice room, be able to be working on things, and then be able to correlate it over to a competition setting. So I really enjoyed the competition schedule this season.
Yeah, going off what Macy said, I was the same way. I didn't really compete too much prior to college season, but I did enjoy it also. It was a lot of constant feedback. And the best part about the college season is, her and I were able to just work on things that we, don't usually do because, when it comes to international level, you are a little more passive, you're more careful because, you obviously want to win the tournament, but then when it's a little bit lighter when in the college level, we were able to work on fun stuff. I hit some throws which were kind of fun. I did some moves that I don't usually do, and honestly I learned a lot. So the moves I don't usually do, now I do them, and it's like it's cool because Coach Sean and Coach Tanya, like they obviously watch how we train, stuff like that. Like they know each of their athletes. And when they're not familiar with like, the move that I just hit or something, they come to me and they're like, hey, that was a great idea. They can work like this in the senior level and the international level, stuff like that. So it's very fortunate that we also have those coaches because as much as they're invested in the college season, they're just as invested in the international season. And yeah, so I think it was great. And it wasn't too much, which was a thing I was kind of nervous about, getting burnt out. But they were so good at tapering and just making sure that, the girls that are usually, going to like ranking events, Pan Am, stuff like that, like we get what we need during the season. Obviously nationals is the number one thing for college, but then for us, it's like worlds, Olympics, stuff like that. So I really enjoyed it, and I think it was perfect.
All right, thank you. Next up is we had Eli. Is Eli McCown.
I had a question for like a two-part question for you, Macey. We touched on it just a second ago on your opponent, but I'm curious for you, seeing that an opponent like Andrew so often, how you kind of approach a match like that when you both know each other very well, you've had success, but it's just kind of like you have to go and win again to be able to go claim your spot. So how you kind of prepare for something like that?
I say it's good to know, like I know her tendencies, like you said, we've wrestled quite often, so I know what I'm getting into, but also I'm on a constant track of trying to be better just personally. So I'm always working on things and always want to be trying things. So as much as we wrestled a couple months ago, I feel like I'm gonna be doing different things. I'm gonna be evolving more, and I think that's where my growth comes in that way. So.
And obviously, you got to sign on for the Iowa Women's Wrestling Club. When we talked like before the college season, you kind of mentioned how you really wanted to come to Iowa because that was something you felt like was something could be for you long term and could you wanted to help build the program is one of the things you kind of talked about. But I'm curious for you and yourself as the individual, what you feel like the Iowa Women's Wrestling Club is going to give you as you try and go for your senior world goals.
Yeah, I mean, looking at joining the college program this past year, like you said, I was looking at it from a long-term perspective. It wasn't just to take part in the college season. So I was really looking at, the resources they had, the coaches that were involved, who my training partners were going to be, and just looking at previous situations I've been in. This was definitely a step up and a level up, and definitely a place where I see that's going to keep continuing to set a high standard for on not only college wrestling but international wrestling. I mean, me and Kylie, she's one of my main practice partners, and we challenge each other every day on the mat, off the mat. So just bringing in people like that going forward, which I think we are definitely capable of doing. I see this place being a real big powerhouse and threat just to the international scene alone. So
Thanks, Macey.
mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Next up is Crystal Hart, Manhattan TV.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Hey, this is for Yianni. I saw a tweet and it says, "All gas, no brakes. Yianni has some of the best offense in the world." Can you talk a little bit about your offense? And also, you've had a lot of adversity with, injury. Could you talk about how you pick yourself back up? Because that's really probably one of the most difficult moments for any athlete.
Yeah, talking about the offense, and just kind of my output, I believe high level wrestling is it's a reflection of who you are, right? If you're a really passive, maybe more reserved person, you're probably going to be more inclined to wrestle that way. For me, I really love the sport. I take a lot of pride in it, but I'm very passionate about it, right? And for me, from a training perspective, competitive perspective, it's really hard for me to go out and do nothing. I have to consciously choose to do nothing, right? But my default is like, I want to go out there and wrestle. I want to attack, score as much as possible. And, and now that I've kind of found my way into this coaching role as well, it's like, I kind of regurgitate it back to the guys, but if it's something you love, like do it. You know what I mean? And I love wrestling. I want to get into positions. I want to attack. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it at practice. I'm going to do it in the match. And that kind of love for the sport is really what gets me back from the injuries too. It's easy to get deterred. I've had 8 or 9 major surgeries. I've missed months and months and months of my wrestling career. I've probably missed as many months as I've trained. But it's hard for me to give this up. I really love it. I have my exit plan, so it's not like I need to be in a hurry to hang them up and get on with my life. And it's just hard to step away from something you love when you know you have more to give. So I think when I'm dealing with those injuries, I'm blessed enough to have friends and family that kind of pull me out of it when I am struggling with that. But at the same time, it's like I look in the mirror and I see myself as a wrestler, so it's hard to give up that part of you and move on until you're really ready to be done.
Do you have a favorite finisher?
Like a shot, I seem to find myself extended head inside single a lot. I've won in Final X back in 2022 like this. I've won a couple matches at the NCAA tournament and actually the US Open the same way. I get in on a single leg, guy sprawls, I'll kind of slide my lock up and lift. Ironically, when I was younger, my dad or my coaches would be like, hey, it's a bad position. Like, don't put yourself there. But I kind of have found a way to make it my own. And kind of going back to what I was saying, it's like it's a reflection of who you are. And apparently that's who I am, is the guy who scores at the end of the match.
Just one last question. Beat the Streets, as you said, is for a good cause. Do you have any cause right now that you're going to promote or maybe thinking of in the future?
To be honest, I love supporting wrestling related things. So, hearing Kennedy talk about the Real American Freestyle, like there's a couple leagues that are coming up that I think are really cool. I love Beat the Streets. I consider myself like, even if I had to hang the shoes up today, I would do everything I can to support the sport. I think it's a really noble, good thing. Wrestling draws a lot of, it shows people who you really are. And I think that forces you to be honest with yourself. I think it's a really good thing. So I want to support the sport however I can. I really love Beat the Streets and what they do and kind of the type of it's a very noble thing. And, hopefully we can establish a professional league, right? Draw in some more fans. And like I said, I love this sport. And I think if we took somebody who didn't know anything about it and we showed them the kind of people that are involved with it and the kind of product that they can deliver, but also, more than anything, getting to know the athletes, I think people would fall in love with them. So if there's anything I could ever do to support that, it's kind of at the forefront of my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. We have time for 2 more questions. The first will be from Andrew Gasper with Drew Blog. Sorry, Andrew.
All good. First, this is for Yianni. I'm going to ask a quick one and Jess is going to follow it up. But first of all, Yianni, that's awesome Russian that you have. We just had Bash on in the background and we heard some of your Russian that you're trying to learn. And I think that's awesome. But first and foremost, congrats on the US Open. And, when you said you were back, you lipped to the cameras that I'm back. And, you wrestled Bryce Andonian. And anybody that knows Bryce Andonian knows that he's extremely dangerous, very difficult wrestler. But, how do you, after these injuries and things like that, wrestling someone that often puts themselves in such, difficult, possible injury risk situations, how do you game plan for somebody like Bryce Andonian?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about Bryce that I respect is he's a gunslinger. He is not going to try to win a match 2-1. I find it admirable. But for me, we really had to change my style a lot. It's like I have had ACL surgery. I've had my labrum in my shoulder repaired. I've had 100 meniscus surgery. So it's just about protecting myself. And when you watch the really, really elite wrestlers, all of their matches kind of look the same, but they're never really vulnerable. Even when they get scored on, it's like their opponent hit something really high level. And I think that's something that I had been missing for a really long time. I could score on anybody in the world. I could score on a 74-kilo guy. But it's like, well, is he going to get his leg ripped off? Is he going to get doubled for 4? How many points is he going to give up to score however many points he scores? So I think a lot of the time that we spent coming back from my surgery was like, hey, you want to wrestle hard. You want to go out there and try to maul this guy, but how can we do it in a way where you're not going to get scored on? You're not going to get your joints ripped off. And a guy like Andonian, I think was validating, right? Because he's the kind of guy who would throw you on top of your head or blow your shoulder out. Not on purpose, but just he wrestles hard and he wrestles with a lot of variety. And I think just, after all the injuries and weight cutting stuff, you have like that internal dialogue of like, man, maybe my best days are behind me. But it just felt good to know that, there's still more.
That's awesome. And Jess just going to follow us up. She had a quick one for you, Yianni.
I just wanted to know, do you have any feedback as far as what media members should or should not do? Like being somewhat new to working media, like I always try to have respect for personal space or personal moments that like are emotional, but I still want to capture them and provide them. Like, and I kind of feel like the camera's always following you throughout your day. Does it feel overwhelming, or are you just kind of accepted the fact that that's what comes with the territory?
That's the one benefit of coming through the NCAA circuit, at least on the men's side, right? Is like my freshman year at the NCAA tournament, after I beat Dean High on the quarterfinals, like I had a camera following me 24/7 for the rest really of my collegiate career. Every NCAA tournament, like I remember going for my fourth and I had cameras like following me into the locker room and I had to be like, hey, give me a minute. So, not everyone's comfortable with that, but I generally feel like, again, when you're in the NFL, you're in the NBA, like those reporters are all over you and they're going to ask you some questions that maybe you don't want to talk about, but it's a reporter's job to create a story. And I think, some people get heat for trying to create stories, maybe different media sources, but at the end of the day, right, this is a sport and we're professional athletes. So we're kind of subjected to that. And that's what we sign up for. You don't have to do this. So I think obviously you always want to be respectful. And I think because of the respect wrestling fans have for elite wrestlers, it's more likely than not that they wouldn't cross that line. But like, again, as a professional athlete, it's our job to kind of present ourselves in a way that we want to be seen, but it's also the media's job to show the world who these people are. Right. And that's just kind of the name of the game. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I guess that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, kind of, because just trying to find a better way to promote the sport and doing the best that we can.
Of course.
We'll help you with that too on the media side. We're here for you if you ever need.
Okay.
Last question goes to Kyle Klingman, and that'll be the last question.
Yianni, would you describe the difference between being a college athlete who also wrestles freestyle to going strictly to freestyle and being a professional in this sport?
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed that my approach to the sport has changed dramatically. The way I kind of view coaching, the way I view my own training, the way I view, what makes a great wrestler, I think is in some ways changed a ton, in other ways not changed at all. But when you're in the college wrestling, kind of the analogy I think about is if you hold your hand up really close to your face, you can't see your whole hand. And that's kind of what happens to you when you're in college. You're competing every weekend. A lot of times guys are cutting a ton of weight. You're very busy with school. Like I know at Cornell, right, we're going to classes consistently. And it's a very tough institution, right? So I think because of that, you're kind of just like in the rat race. Then you graduate, you have a year removed where, I'm like I said, I'm in this coaching role, but I have a lot of time in my day where I'm talking about wrestling, thinking about wrestling, working on my own wrestling, but also kind of translating that to maybe some younger guys. When you do that, you're really forced to think about, well, why do I do this? And, why are these great guys great? And, what makes this guy great and this guy not great aside from their ability to wrestle or maybe their natural ability, let's say. I think when you're in the senior level, it's a really good opportunity to become wise because you have that separation of like when I was in school, I was going to 2 or 3 classes a day, probably responsible for a good amount of homework a day. I was working out 2 or 3 times a day. You don't really have time to think about the big picture of like, what kind of, wrestler am I going to be? Like, what is my style? Like, what's the big picture for me to work on? Right. And that's kind of falls on your coaches. But at the end of the day, like no one knows you better than you know yourself, if you can be honest with yourself. And I think for me, being on the senior level, it gave me a chance to really think about like who I am and how that's going to translate to the 6 minutes I have to win this wrestling match.
Great. Thank you, Yianni. Thanks, everyone, for the very thoughtful questions, and the answers were terrific. We appreciate all 3 of you and looking forward to seeing all of you there. Of course, I gave you the wrong dates at the top. June 14th is the date of the event. June 3rd. I had the right day, Friday, Saturday, wrong date. June 13th, press conference at 11 a.m. Please let us know if you're interested in that. You'll get more info on that. And then June 14th, the Saturday, is the 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Again, I want to thank Kennedy Blades, Macey Kilty, Yianni Diakomihalis for being with us today. I've put my information in the chat in case you don't have it. The recording of this and didn't ask me for it already. Again, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being with you and see you guys in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.